It's loading.
Okay. It's on? Yes. Welcome to this afternoon session about the power of networking. I think it's an excellent topic to end a long day of discussions, which is all about networking, because we have participants from all around the world joining us today. And before I introduce the topic and our panelists, I would just like the two panelists to raise their hands when I call on the names and say, where are you calling from? Anita, where are you calling from?
Hello, everyone. I'm calling from Budapest, Hungary.
From Budapest, fantastic. And Patrick, yourself, where are you calling from?
I'm also calling from Budapest at the moment.
Okay, great, fantastic. So we have a very strong presence from Hungary, as you say. Of course, Hungary has a bit of a history of networking. You know, it's a small country in the heart of Europe, you know, with a lot of international institutions and, of course, with a strong cultural backbone. And Budapest is always a lovely city to visit. So coming to the topic of this evening session, networking. What does networking really mean? Networking means basically to establish trust with others, to get to know each other and to work on this trust dimension for the future, and to establish a contact with somebody you think, you know, who might be useful in your endeavors and in your perspective, in your visions at a later stage. And networking is used by many organizations around the world. Business leaders try to establish trust and get to know each other. And sometimes, you know, when you have a choice to work with somebody, you might look into your network and say, oh, whom do I know and whom can I work with on a particular issue? So maybe that's just as a quick introductory remark. And maybe calling now on the two panelists, Anita and Patrick, tell us first what you do and about your professional background and about your very personal vision of networking. Patrick, would you like to start?
Thank you very much. I am the president of the SME and Entrepreneurship Committee at the Business and Industry Advisory Committee of OECD. Basically, we work with OECD and we make sure when a global policy agenda is being made, the voice of business is heard. And I'm also the honorary president of the European Young Entrepreneurs Association called JEUN, and I work with many business organizations. I think all the business organizations, chambers and employers organization are coming together and being formed for the core purpose of networking. Of course, in one hand, to make your voice heard, but on the other hand, that entrepreneurs wants to be with like-minded people, wants to be with other people whom they can do business to and whom they can trust. I fully agree, Frank, with your statement that the core of networking is trust, and also the core of business is trust, because if you trust someone, then you can do business. And this year has been very challenging for all the business organizations, also for the networking organizations all around the world, because this kind of sessions are great. We can still debate about topics, but I do think that one of the important part of networking is what's happening at the conference, outside of the conference room, maybe at the cafeteria or at night at the cocktail reception, because people are more open to other to talk and to mingle. And I think the trust, building trust, is a very important part when we are there together and we can learn about each other, when we can learn about not just the professional side of each other, and that's something which is very important. And I've been working on 5 continents. My private business is international business development. And I do see that even though we have Google, even though we have a connected, digitally connected world, even from another continent, they approach you and they ask you that, hey, I know you, I trust you. Do you know such company in XYZ whom I can work with in your country or in your continent? So even though people has the tremendous information on the internet, and we can basically find and identify any company in the world. We still prefer to use our personal connections and still prefer the reference of our friends and of our trusted partner. I think that's the true power of networking, even in the global environment.
I think you're absolutely right, Patrick. You talk about the true power of networking and the references, right? You ask your peers, your friends, if they can recommend somebody, and that's definitely, the dimension of trust. Even so, you can get all the information, the public information, on the net. So if you think about, networking, would you always go with people who are similar to yourself, who have the same kind of set of values, or would you also go with totally different people? Because, enlarging your business, it might mean that you have to go to different cultures, different industries. So would you go more for people who are similar or who are different?
I think similarities make us friends, but different profile make us interesting for each other, because what I don't know, I trust you know. What you don't know, you trust I know, and this is how we can put the puzzle together. But the basics is always that we have common ground, like we see some part of the world similar, and that's what makes the binding between us. Or we can even talk about the core values.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And, there are a lot of networks around the world, like alumni networks. So if you graduate from a university these days, you're part of an alumni network. And even, like former employees, people who worked for McKinsey, stay in this network for a lifetime. Would you agree, Anita? You are represent, the younger generation, and, youth might have a different view on networking. You are a digital native. Compared, to people like myself who maybe still go to the cafeteria or cocktail receptions, carry business cards. So what puts, young people apart when it comes to networking? And tell us, of course, also about your own background and where you come from.
Yeah, so hi everyone again. I'm Anita. I have a background in international relations, so very diverse from business, but then I transitioned into a different work. Currently, I am involved in the leadership area, like business, if you want to call it. So I work with Dr. Sampotolikio in the Preparing Global Leaders Forum. We are training, young professionals, how to become good leaders and how to adapt to the fast changing world that we are facing today. Get ready, leaders to embrace change. And besides that, I also work with Michele Ortsan in the EUCHAM, the European Chamber, which is a think tank. An NGO practically connecting private and public sector, representing the interests of national and international companies, institutions, and also in businesses. One of our main achievements is Greenville, which is like the first NGO born out of with like a global impact. For example, we have our manifesto translated in 40 languages and 40 country themes. Work on it to expand Greenville's policies. So basically, that's about leadership and then lobbying, maybe if you wanna frame it like that. And yes, I am very new to this due to my age, and I also myself experienced this disruption or this gap between two generations. To be frank, I never had a business card printed, for example. And whenever I went, to attend conferences, most of them, the first time in my life, in Munich, I don't know, in Brussels, all these people had business cards, and I always said, sorry, I don't have mine, but this is my LinkedIn or like my, barcode to scan it, and you can find me immediately. So I have that experience, and yes, I think that's the future. Like we are going digital. We will need to save the world. So like digital is the future, and we will have to find ways, to bridge this gap between old way of networking and new way of networking. I think we are in the transition phase, and it's quite exciting to see how we are managing that, how we are going to succeed.
Yeah, it's definitely a transition phase. And you say, when you go to a networking event with people of my age, they all carry business cards. And so they're really two different worlds. How do you match? And I've seen so many instances, right? Like almost a cultural shock when you don't really connect. You carry your mobile phone. When you go to China these days, actually nobody carries business cards anymore. All is done per WeChat, and it's always a moment of perfect networking experience when you approach each other, and take the barcode, and then kind of it's like an ice-breaking moment, or almost. And China has been known actually as the country of business cards in the past. You couldn't survive without a business card. And when foreigners travel to China, usually they print business cards, even written in Chinese. But yeah, everything is shifting with digital. And how do you think, digital events, video conferences, networking on the web could be embraced in the future? Are we really replacing the kind of cocktail receptions we had in the past, when we meet in the coffee break? How can we do that? For example, now we are on the screen, but on top of, our conversation, how can we exchange ideas with other people whom we might meet just randomly at a cocktail reception? Sometimes it's really the random principle, right? You go to a group of people and then you start to talk. So how can we put this experience into the digital age?
That's tough question, Cole, because I don't necessarily think that we can replace personal connections. But seeing all the developments, especially now that we are experiencing under the COVID pandemics, we really have to work on finding the middle way. Personal connections are not to be abandoned. However, we need to find a way to meaningfully engage digitally. I think this past year is a great experience. There is a lot of learnings, and we'll have to do and incorporate in the future. Just for example, you talked about McKinsey. McKinsey consultants travel 2 or 3 times, like fly 2 or 3 times a week usually, and now they are practically staying in their like home offices, or like homes, or just local offices, and they call the globe. So I don't think they are going to go back to the same level of traveling again, but they cannot abandon it. So I think the main task that is ahead of us to find a middle ground between personal and online networking events and connections.
Yeah. The middle ground, and maybe hybrid solutions in the future. In the post-COVID environment, we will still meet again, but maybe much less. I remember in the past, I were flying to any place in the world just for one meeting. One important meeting was warranting the trip. I'd once, actually my worst experience in this regard, I flew to Hong Kong. I arrived in the morning. I had like a 6-hour meetings schedule, and I flew back without staying overnight. And just think about, the carbon footprint. I did this like 4 or 5 years ago, and I had a very bad conscience, but was such an important meeting, I had to go. But I believe in the future this won't happen again. We will just do a video conference and do it online. Would you agree, Patrick, with Anita's view, saying that the digital will continue even after COVID? So we won't go back to, let's say, the old good days of doing business. We will all, potentially work from home offices, and we don't have to go to offices even, post-COVID.
Well, we see it through different surveys regarding the COVID crisis that even the behavior of the business community has changed. In one hand, COVID was a very bad thing, of course, and a huge economic damage it caused to the world. But on the other hand, it even accelerated the digitalization of the SME sector. We were talking a lot about the digitalization and the digitalization needs of the small and medium enterprises around the world, and it was very lacking behind compared to large companies. During this year, business owners and SME owners, by necessity, needed to learn to transform their businesses to become more digital. In one hand, so many companies started online shops, so many companies started online payment solutions, and yes, so many companies started to do their board meetings, their management through video chat and through these online platforms. So this transition is going on, and I think this could be a very interesting point when we talk about the future business. I personally know lots of big company owners who were really surprised about the efficiency of the home office, because before that they were renting huge offices and they said that I can only trust my employee when they are here next to me. And now they were positively surprised that, except a few people in every organization, the majority of the people were working very well from home. And also they realized that basically the everyday rush, what we were doing, was maybe unnecessary. How many of us happen to have days when we were having 4 or 5 meetings, running with a car or by any mean of transport, to here for a coffee, to that office, to here, to there, and we were spending hours and hours commuting between meetings, and at the end of the day usually it turned out that it was not so necessary to travel. On the other hand, what you said regarding the international relationships, we went to different meetings and traveled to other countries even without really knowing the partner or really knowing whether the business is going to be worth a travel or not, but we hopped on a plane and we went there. I think the future of networking and the future of doing business is somewhere in between. Now that people and business people used to the technology, and this kind of meetings like today's meeting or a video conference is much more reachable and much more effective for the first step than to run somewhere, either in your country or in another country. But I do think that the personal connections and the trust building part cannot really be done through virtual conferences, and it's not the same to talk to someone on the screen than talk to someone in the real life. So I think the future is hybrid. It's very good because we eliminate unnecessary meetings, or we can eliminate unnecessary travels by using more the technology and talking more and understanding about each other's business and the opportunities via virtual meetings or video meetings. But then if there's the check or there's the green light, I do think that we will still hop on the plane and visit each other.
Right. Yeah, I think I agree. It could be an interesting hybrid solution, where you test the ground per video. You meet somebody, have a first discussion, you carry on, and then if you think, you're close to the business, then you meet, right? You fly, you greet, you do the typical networking. Maybe you go out for a lunch or dinner, which is always like an ice-breaking element. I see. Yeah, I know that's an interesting new world. I believe that video conferences are more efficient than in-person meetings. When you meet somebody in person, you do first a lot of kind of chit-chat, right? You say, what a nice weather today, and you start to talk about issues which are not directly related, right? And you don't really come to the point. I've seen on video conferences that you come much quicker to the point, and that's maybe the efficiency you mentioned before, Patrick. Would you agree, Anita, in this analysis that connections per video, the digital connections might be more efficient than the in-person meeting?
Yeah, like I also took notes that when Patrick said that companies realized how they can still trust their employees, and like how they can increase efficiency apparently even working from home. And I personally think we need to really find this fine balance between the human factor and efficiency. For example, it's one of the very first lessons we teach at PGLF, that like you never have the second chance for a first impression. And that first impression, it's really hard, or like really different when you have it only behind the screen. I think it's very different. So it's a big challenge that we are all, like testing ways, and we are all learning together to do that. And I don't think that anyone has the answer for like how it is going to look like in the future. But I'm just still maybe old school, even though I'm like the youngest here in that case, that I think that with the personal contact, the personal, like touch, like is very important when you build trust and relationships, especially in the beginning. As you just mentioned in the beginning, the trust is the key to in every network, in business, in society. And like it's really hard to build trust, especially at the first meeting. Behind the screen. That's my opinion. And then once the trust is there, it's easier to continue and to carry on from distance in video calls. But I think the key is the personal meeting to establish this trust. So.
Right. Yeah, I've seen that. Some people are very charismatic. When you meet them in person, they kind of can fill the room with their charisma. They have like body language and all that. But when they speak on video, you can't get this charisma, and it's so different. And so I think, yeah, a real meeting, in-person meeting, can't be really replaced. When it comes to this first impression, the charisma, getting really the whole character of people and to get to know them. Talking about the future of digital, what does it all mean for the future of work? Patrick, you mentioned in the future, we might not rent lavish offices anymore. We will work from home. We meet from time to time, but maybe we just meet in a hotel lobby. We don't have to rent offices. But this means actually a very, comprehensive transformation of our economies. It means basically that the real estate sector goes down, that the airline industry goes down, the tourism sector goes down, and then we can replace also a lot of manual work with artificial intelligence, meaning that maybe in the future there will be so many job losses and kind of a revolution in the making. And I'm not talking about the fourth industrial revolution, which is mostly just the technology part, but maybe a real revolution, because people will go to the streets and say, I lost my job, I can't be a digital worker, and will be a lot of social unrest. So what is your future or your view on the future of work?
Well, digitalization is disrupting how we do work globally. But this is not just in context of COVID. We were already talking about it years back. 2 or 3 years, I think 3 years ago, there was a big World Economic Forum survey which showed that 2 billion workplaces could be affected by digitalization in the next 10 to 15 years. And not just blue-collar workers, but also white-collar workers will need to adopt. There will be 3 different kinds of interruption. One is when we lose our job. For instance, self-driving cars will take the job of taxi drivers. We will have some kind of jobs which will need to be combined with artificial intelligence or will be more robotized or digitalized. But on the other hand, we will have lots of future job opportunities which are basically not yet known. For instance, the 5 most demanding jobs today weren't existing 15 years ago. So basically, this is a big transition. On the other hand, regarding the workplace and work environment, yes, big companies are now thinking to give back office spaces, and for instance, they don't have to have a 1,000 seat in a headquarter, because they can do half. What I see on the market, that even large companies are thinking to shrinken their offices, but they do still want to keep like community places and desks. Instead of having your own desk and commuting to work every day, you can share your time between effective home office, and you can go and still collaborate and do project meetings and share a desk like in a co-working space at a startup. So we do think that the whole world is going to change. The world of work is going to dramatically change because of the digitalization and because of the takeaways from the COVID crisis. But I do think that either just digital or either just personal will not be the way anymore. The solution is anyway hybrid, but at the end of the day, I do think that we are human and we need that coffee with our coworker, and we need to look into our eyes, and we need to rub each other's shoulder when we did something good together.
Right. I'm very glad to hear, that you mentioned the human condition and, the human perspective of interaction. I think we are social animals, and we need this interaction. That's the reason, why we even create families, having kids, having, large families. It's in a way that, we can't just sit 24 hours or let's say 12 hours in front of the computer, but we need a certain social interaction. Would you agree, Anita? Of course, from the young generation as a digital native, and are there any kind of psychological issues, when you spend all the time in front of the computer without like a real interaction and like a real smile right in front of you, but just like the digital smile? How could this be, and how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, actually, I agree with everything that Patrick has just said. Like he started from the real estate sector that is going under transformation, and I think that remote work and community spaces, co-working spaces that gather people who do remote work will boom on the other hand. So I think we are seeing this shift from the real estate market to like more of these co-working spaces. I think they are going to boom, and then we will have a lot more, especially in paradises such as like Thailand and like coast of oceans. Many people, like spend their time behind their PC, want to see the sea and want to see the nature. Like, so I think we are seeing this shift in the upcoming years, even faster than it would have happened without COVID, because it was already happening, but COVID is fastening the entire process. Back to the digitalization and the personal, I again completely agree. Like you cannot miss the human touch, the human meeting, the human side of it. We are social people. That's why we are organizing ourselves in families, friendship circles, networks, societies. We need the touch with other humans. So no question on that side either. And then like the other big challenge I think we really need to think about, again, was mentioned by Patrick, is the ethical questions of digitalization and AI. And I hear many more experts saying, even like more frequently nowadays, that we need a lot more philosophers in the upcoming years. The more jobs and the more tasks the AI and robots are taking over, the more ethical dilemmas we are going to face, or like we are going to have to face. And for that, we need like an ever-growing number of philosophers, of people who are thinking about these ethical questions and are setting the way for it. So yeah, on one side, we are going to lose some jobs, but on the other side, we are going to have new jobs that we have never seen before. Again, I can just repeat what Patrick has just said. So I think it's a very exciting decade we are living in, and I think that COVID fastened the entire process. So all these things that are happening within 1 or 2 years of frame would have happened in 10 years maybe without COVID. So
yeah, a lot of nuggets of wisdom, Anita, and basically COVID is almost like a blessing in disguise, when it comes to the future of work, accelerating digitalization, processes we always talked about, didn't really dare to implement, are happening now because we are forced to implement digital transformations. And with AI, what you said, Patrick, before, of course, we are also losing white collar jobs. Take, for example, a lawyer, like in the legal profession, most regular legal work, I would say 80%, can actually be done by AI agents in the future. And you don't really need lawyers anymore. Only like, the very complex cases, you might still like the human brain of solving it. And it's true for most white collar work. And maybe, we need indeed need more philosophers and not just like specialists. I think in the future, if you look into the job profile, we need people who understand everything, starting from technology, to kind of, the human interaction, to sociology and to philosophy. Maybe we need even what Plato says, the Greek philosopher. We need kings at the top of our countries. We need philosophers at the top of our countries instead of kings. So what they call the philosopher king, who is really looking after his people and not just looking into re-election and the whole kind of democratic process, right? Which is always 4 years, and then you have opposition, you fight. So maybe, he's right that we need more philosophers. You're right, Anita, in saying that. And maybe looking into the curriculum of our, university studies, we need to broaden it. And I think philosophy should be a main part of everything we do. Talking about ethics and the ethical issues, both of you mentioned before, and it's of course very much linked to philosophy. Are there any kind of ethical issues with networking? Is it very ethical, let's say, to gain an advantage over somebody else who might not have the same networking skills, either digital or non-digital? Some people are more kind of introverted. When I go to like a cocktail party, right, they usually stand somewhere in a corner, but they don't really mingle. Other people are very outgoing, so that's like a starting advantage. And the same is true on the digital side. Some people are very much at ease with the digital networking aspects, others maybe much less. So this basically means a huge advantage for people who are strong networker and a disadvantage for those who are not. So how would you like to solve this ethical dilemma? Question to both of you. Maybe you start, Anita.
Good. Yeah, that's a good question. I think it has been a good question. I think this dilemma is going to stay there because we will always have extrovert and introvert people, and it's like hard to change if someone doesn't want to change that. I would rather shift the attention to the equity question, or like equality question. Like in the future, those who don't have access to internet or good computer won't even know about digital events that are happening. So to me, that's more of a problem, more of a big question here. Like how do we make sure that everyone has a chance to to be there to show themselves if they are extroverts and like want to network or have the talent to network. To me, that's more of a big question. I think that this personality question has been always there and will stay there. I worry more about the equal chances for people who come from less developed areas, in my opinion.
Right. Maybe just a quick follow-up question before I come to you, Patrick. What about the kind of gender issue when it comes to networking? My observation is that maybe for men, it might be easier to network, right? Men are usually more like the dominant people, at least, let's say, in our perception, or maybe also experience. And if, let's say, a female, let's say, goes into a cocktail party, right, and very actively engages with others and approaches, it might be actually misinterpreted by some people. Do we have those kind of experiences, and is there really a gender issue when it comes to networking?
Yes, I can only speak from my experience. Oftentimes experience at first they look at me as a woman and only secondly as a professional at such cocktail parties. And I think it's a long way for us as a society to overcome that and then work on that together. Comparing the situation maybe from 30 or 40 years ago, we have already achieved a lot together, but there is still a long way to go. I think it only comes with education, a lot of workshops, experience, talks like this. But yes, right. It's a persisting issue that we have to be conscious about. That's the first step, that we become conscious about. Second, only together, involving all of the genders there. Try to find a solution, keep talking about it, and make everyone aware that there is this issue and we have to work together on improving it.
Right. Yeah, what we do at Horace is, we also organize large-scale events in person and digital. Our vision is to have 50% female speakers a true gender balance, and then avoiding the issues we just mentioned, right? That when you do networking, people first perceive you as women and then as a professional, and I think this has to stop. And I think the only way to do so maybe is to increase the number of female participants, and then it's very natural. We reached now 42% female speakers, which is very high. So we make a very special effort, to find talented female entrepreneurs and business leaders and government representatives. And if you have a choice, to say we have one seat left, we would always go for the female contender. Sorry to say this, Patrick, but that's a bit just to increase the arithmetic. And I'm not so much a fan of a quota, but I think we have to voluntarily do that, right? Whatever we do, have as many as female talent as possible, and we do a very special effort, to invite female participants. Patrick, what is your view, on the ethical dimension of networking?
Well, first of all, congratulations, Frank, because you're doing a great job with Horasis, and the gender balance, I think, is also a very, very important issue. So it's very good to see that, for instance, Horasis, as one of the gem of the global networking events, is there and taking focus on this. Yes, we are not equal, neither as people, neither as entrepreneurs, because we born with different kind of skill sets, and based on our drive or inner drive, we learn more skills and we make ourselves better. In the life and in the evolution and in business, we always know that not the strongest, but the most flexible and the most adaptable are the ones who survive. And I think it also applies to the digital world and the digital networking. One thing is for sure, that an introvert will not have the typical problem like we face at the cocktail party, that we are talking with someone for half an hour and we do not remember their name from the introduction. Now it's written here for everyone. We can read the names, so at least the name problem is solved through the digital world. But on the other hand, I think that the world is full of choices, and we need to make the good choices. As we talked about in the beginning, that trust and common values are very important in order to even decide in the first minute that we want to do business with someone, or someone's connections can be interesting for us or not, business or personal wise. I think the digital events and the digital technologies are giving us great opportunity to speed up things, to filter things better. As you said, Frank, I really liked it, what you concluded, that, for instance, these digital meetings or these online meetings makes things faster, because we will not chat so much about the weather, but we'll go straight to business. So I think we need to set a new normal, how to combine those. And of course, there is one very interesting thing regarding these online meetings, if we come to the ethical perspective, that these meetings can be recorded, or, for instance, most of the Zoom meetings are recorded by participants. And usually when you meet someone, some people, can say some, with a goodwill, but they can say some bigger things just to sell their product, or just try to have a better light or better picture. I think certainly if we are talking about the ethical points, these kind of systems are a little bit helping people to get closer to the business, get more straight focus on the deal. But also I think people are more careful what they promise, because it's like when we write an offer in a written format, so it's a little bit different. But I think this is the second, the first or the second step. But then we do need to build the trust in person. So to finalize details of a deal is also very important, because I still highlight the personal aspect, that these tools can make things faster, make things smarter, but at the end of the day, the business is made between two persons. And maybe today I'm sitting behind or under this logo at this company, and tomorrow I will sit under that logo with that company, but you still will be my trusted person, you will still be my friend, and we will do business no matter which company I am sitting, because two logo or two paper contract or statutes cannot make the business. At the end of the day, we are human, we do the business no matter under which logo we are sitting. To talk from a side of a logo or the logo behind me and talk about professional things, it's great. But in terms of do long-term and real valuable networking, it's very important to make the personal connections. And if we talk about networking, we really need to talk about one issue, which is a little bit close to the ethical aspect. So many people say that I have this many connection, that many connection, it's great. But the real connection, the real power of networking, when you can call someone in the middle of the night, or you can call someone with a question. So just to exchange a business card, and I have 6,000 important people in my business card folder, it doesn't mean I have a good network. And to build the trust needs successful business, need lots of personal meeting, and need the chemistry between us. And these digital platforms are very unlikely to build the chemistry between us. It can help us to make a good contract quick, but to build the long-term networking and build a sustainable network, I think we need to use both technology combined.
Yeah, basically contacts need to be nourished all the time. It's not like, one-off exchanging a business card or make a digital connection. It has to be revived. You have to gain trust, but you have to also regain trust and, maintain the trust by many means, right? And if you don't call a business partner for a year, you might be lost in his mind, and he's turning to other people. So that's always, the continuation and being relevant. You made also an interesting point, Patrick, on the transparency of digital meetings, because nowadays, we record everything. Can be seen. It's not behind closed doors. Networking always got this kind of dimension, saying it's like, a club of people behind a closed door, right? And what's happening inside, it's not really known to the outside. So maybe, digitalization is also a process for better democracy, because now we know what's happening and everybody is involved and we can share with the public. I think we have just a few minutes left, and I think we have so many interesting ideas. We could maybe continue for hours, but let me just maybe finish the session by asking you a question, if I may, and asking you if you can give like 2 or 3 networking tips to the audience. What are the most important elements of networking from a personal perspective? What would you like to share with the audience? Anita, would you like to start?
Yes, of course. I think the most important thing is to be bold and you have a clear idea what you want to do and go for it. Approach people. Tell them what you want, and don't be afraid to to approach people that you've never met before, you don't have connections. The world is for those who are brave. So I think especially with the digital world today, there are no limits. I think the 6 degrees of separation is already a 2 or 3 today with all these social platforms and internet. So I think just be brave, be bold, and be precise about what you want. Approach the people you want. You shape your own network, so go out there and just do it.
Yeah, very good advice, being brave and just doing it, right? And not waiting. I think the future is not waiting for us. We have to shape the future, and the personal touch is so important in it. I fully agree. Patrick, your advice to the audience.
My advice is to use what you have and always be open for innovation and the digital technologies. Let them come into your life, but combine it wisely with your routine and make a good mix which benefits you, your business, and your surrounding. So with these technologies, you can create win-win-win situations.
Right. Yeah. Win-win-win. I think that's a great conclusion. And sometimes, 1 + 1 is not 2, but it's 11, when we can combine different forces, right? And that's maybe the power of networking, that we can rely on others with huge repercussions on the future of work. This was one of the themes we discussed today. Also the way how companies organize themselves. Maybe in the future, you know, large conglomerates, you know, Fortune 500 companies will be much smaller. There's just maybe a small headquarter and all kind of functions, corporate functions might be outsourced to, you know, special agencies and partners. It's a true networking approach amongst companies, not just amongst individuals, but a new division of work. So, you know, you don't maybe need people doing like accounting in the future or marketing or coding. Everything will be done by business partners. And I think, you know, the ones who can master networking on a personal level, on an individual level, and also on the corporate level, might be, you know, the winner in the future, or, you know, the company with the best competitive advantage. And yeah, last point, and what you brought up, Anita, before, maybe at the head of companies also we need philosophers, not only the head of countries, right? People who understand what society needs, people who understand how to interact with societies, and not only suppliers and customers, and you know, the local stakeholders, but also, you know, the whole society at large. I think, you know, everything is interconnected through networks, and whatever we do has repercussions on others. Dialogue is important. I think, you know, the follow-up of networking is really dialogue, you know, and going into the detail exchange. Even sometimes we have different opinions, and finding the middle ground. And that's also something you mentioned before, Anita, you know, avoiding the extremes. And, you know, by the virtue of getting together in a network, trying to find the middle ground. So I think we should leave it with that, with this positive note. I think, you know, wonderful discussion. The two of you, Anita and Patrick, you're real stars. And I hope there will be a lot of networking happening after the sessions, and we can continue the discussion offline as well. So thank you very much to both of you, and thanks so much to our audience.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think okay.